Hello and welcome to Higher Thinking on Higher Ed. I am Sharlyn Carrington of Content Strong Communications, the fractional communications and marketing leader of choice for universities, colleges, and nonprofits. And today I am excited to continue diving into the trends and the challenges encountered by leaders in higher education's communications, marketing, advancement, whatever. And I'm honored to welcome Gina Bianchi to the hot seat. Gina is the Associate Vice President for Advancement and Campaign Strategy at Illinois Wesleyan University, where she is leading the institution's next major capital campaign. With over 30 years of experience in higher education advancement, she has raised more than $50 million in support of scholarships, programs, facilities across multiple institutions. That's huge, Gina. Gina is a seasoned strategist, community leader, and certified fundraising executive committed to building lasting alumni and donor engagement. Thank you so, so much for bringing your expertise to this conversation. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm happy to be here. You mentioned 30 years. Gosh, I just did math in my head. I am OLD.
No, you're not. No, no. It just means you're wise. You're WISE. That's what it means.
Okay, let's go with that then.
Let's go with that. Let's go with that. I feel like that's what that should be plastered up on all of our walls. Like our experience, years of experience makes us wise. That's what it is. So the first question I like to ask really is just, situate me a little bit. Tell me a little bit about your current role leading fundraising efforts, how it contributes to the mission of the institution, and, kind of what's going on in your world.
Well, yeah, I'll back up a little bit. As we just mentioned, 30 years in higher education, it's not a field people aspire to get into when they're a child. I want to be a nurse, I want to be a fireman, whatever it is. I've just stumbled into this and I've truly have found my passion. So I'm pleased to have worked at one, two, three institutions in advancement for the most part, because I feel very strongly about what we do. And
Right.
in a nutshell, I'd like to tell my friends and family that I help shape family trees.
Right.
Because without the work we do in fundraising, some young people won't have the opportunity for higher education. And it's kind of a family running joke. When are you going to graduate, Gina? Because I've only worked on a college campus. Well, I kind of have. But in full disclosure, I left my last employer in September thinking I was going to retire from higher education.
Right.
It was going to be my time. It's an uphill battle with the changing of the landscape over the years. We can go tell the whole history of advance from my perspective, but we won't. But of course, the pandemic shaped things. The political scene has shaped things. People are crushing the ROI before your residential institution, et cetera, et
Yep.
cetera. So I was going to be done. And then I couldn't say no to a phenomenal leader at Illinois Wesleyan University. He was a newer president, was joined the university about a year ago. And I had told myself I wanted to come back and give back to my community, a community that I was just sleeping in while I was driving to my employer and working long days and long weeks. And I missed my life and I missed giving back to my community, being involved with boards and community service. So I got to do that for about 4 months before I took this job at Illinois Wesleyan just this past January of 2025. And I was hired to lead their capital campaign. So I've been a part of three capital campaigns prior to this post at various stages,
Right.
beginning them, ending them. So this is an opportunity for me at Illinois Wesleyan. We are in a quiet phase of a campaign. We will go public in a year or so, depending on the progress in the fundraising scheme. So it's an opportunity for me to see one almost from start to finish. A lot of the legwork had been done before my arrival, but as I've dug my heels in, I recognize there's still a lot of legwork to do. And so it's been a challenge for me to not just put the framework of the campaign together, but to learn the nuances of this university. I
Right.
have advancement experience, but it's different systems, processes, CRMs, et cetera, et cetera. So I like to call it, I'm learning the Wesleyan way. Yes, I know the work, but how to execute the work here has been the challenge. And it's been fun. And I wouldn't do what I do if it weren't fun, because it didn't seem like work, and nobody wants to work. They want to enjoy what they do every day, right?
Yeah.
So it's been very rewarding. I'm just tickled to be here. So I'm not sure if I answered your question. I kind of
You
diverted a little
did.
bit.
Yeah, no, you did. I mean, I took away a lot of things actually from what you said. I mean, of course, being new into the institute, newer into the institution, that's always a big change. And as you rightfully said, we all have these transferable skills that you can bring anywhere, but what really makes or breaks our roles in an institution is understanding how an institution works and how the ins and outs and being able to navigate that, particularly now when we're in a climate that is surrounding us, and we'll get into that in a second, that is so, it can be so contentious, that can feel chaotic, that can, so many, so many different things are going on, that it is really important to figure out how you navigate your current ecosystem and then navigate the broader world and how that impacts your role. So I mean I think that's a very big point. The second question I like to always ask is about, and you rightfully so mentioned a lot of those items, is how the current sector shifts and the current climate is kind of impacting your role currently and what that means for your job. I mean, you talked about, this changing idea of ROI in higher education. You talked about, the political landscape and what that means. I mean, you probably mentioned or probably thinking about like the enrollment cliff and what that means for, the
Yep.
things that you do. So, really, how are kind of the shifting public perceptions of the value of higher education impacting how you approach fundraising, how you approach, alumni engagement?
There's still a need. I mean, absolutely. Illinois Wesleyan University is situated in central Illinois, and we have a public institution a mile up the road, and we have a community college about a mile and a quarter up the road. And we're a small private liberal arts institution. I think, and we're a community of about 130,000 um, residents. I think there's room for all of us because we serve different sectors. And that's the point I want to make to anyone that'll listen is there's still a role for higher education. Yes, I'm pleased that the trades have, escalated in prominence, and that's an alternative option for young people.
Right.
Community college, that's where I got my start actually back in the late 80s, admittedly. It was right for me at the time. And I just want to have young people and families recognize that they have options. So what we do from a fundraising perspective and advancement is helping to those that want to come here, see themselves at a small private liberal arts, we can afford them the opportunity because
Right.
we can offer nice scholarship packages and have nice aesthetics and really lean into their experience. Because you and I both know, and many of these listeners know, that it's not just about what you learn in the classroom, it's what you learn about yourself
Yeah.
outside the classroom with your interactions, whether it's with the faculty members or your roommate or your team members or whatever it is. You're a young person, you're growing up, you're becoming an adult. And
Right.
I just love that we can help shape that and provide for that. So yes, people can, get on their high horse and be concerned about, what does liberal arts mean, or it's so expensive.
Right.
We can have argument after argument, but at the end of the day, we all want to succeed and provide opportunities for others to succeed and flourish. That's what it
Right.
boils down to for me. So I try to avoid the contentious conversations and find some common ground when I'm talking with alumni and prospective donors, because again, there is a place. And I love having the opportunity to have those conversations on a regular basis.
Right. I mean, tying it back to something you said earlier, this idea of a big part of your role is helping to shape or helping to build family trees, right? Like what
Mhm.
it means when you give someone kind of a well-rounded education and what they're able to take back to their families and how that's able to kind of permeate itself across their, individual or their local communities. I wonder if this is a question that just came to mind. I wonder if that's part of, I don't want to say a storytelling challenge because I think it's an opportunity, but I wonder if you're using that kind of as an opportunity in your storytelling to some of, your prospective donors, I'd say, and alumni, and really trying to engage them in that. And once again, using that to almost prop up the value of higher education, particularly from a liberal arts institution.
I can talk the talk because I've walked the walk. I am a first generation college student. My parents were very hardworking individuals, blue collar, but didn't come from a higher ed background, weren't exposed to it in the small towns they came from, I lived in. And so I was afforded this opportunity. It was me really just looking around at my high
Right.
school classmates going, well, they're looking at colleges, what is that about? And just kind of learning as I'm peering over their shoulders. And I went to a junior college, 2 years, because that's what we could afford and it was convenient. And then I launched myself, to a 4 year. And I just can look back and look over my shoulder and says, wow, I'm so fortunate to have had these decisions. I haven't made these decisions, and have been exposed to the opportunity to learn.
Right.
Whether it's a high school job, or excuse me, career fair, college fair, I should say. That's the word I'm looking for, a college fair.
Hmm.
I can't remember what it was that piqued my interest, but maybe it was a number of things. But I am who I am and where I am today because of education. And hopefully you can hear my voice. It's the passion I have for this work. I found my passion in advancement, but I'm appreciative of my peers, down the hall that are working in student affairs, or, down the other hall that are working in marketing. It's a
Right.
whole field that I wasn't exposed to until I got in it. And I'm just very
Right.
fortunate to be a part of it. And again, I'm becoming quite the advocate for it.
Right. I think, I think there's a big almost missing story or missing opportunity to be told surrounding advancement and fundraising in particular when it comes to higher education, because we always we understand the academic side of it, we understand the communications and marketing side of it and how valuable that is, but I think people misunderstand the value of fundraisers, because what it means is you're bringing these funds into your institution so you can make the institution better and you can make the educational experience better for students. And it's difficult for people, I think, to make that connection as to why that role in particular is so important. If we think a little bit more detailed and a little bit more granular into kind of your day to day, and particularly some of the projects you said you're working on right now, some bigger advancement campaigns, what's working for you guys right now? What's not? What aspects of your capital campaign planning are moving ahead, I don't know, smoothly, and where are you kind of encountering the bigger hurdles?
Well, these ones, at least in my world, what I think is obvious are those where people can see the tangible benefits. For
Right.
example, infrastructure, building projects. So we broke ground this spring on a new, what we're calling an idea center. So we're
Right.
leaning heavily into entrepreneurships. We want to be, a national leader in an entrepreneur liberal arts education. So people have gotten excited about this concept, about the building, because we've, released the plans. So I don't want to say that's easy, but fundraising for something you can see is easier. The same is true about our residence halls. You made the comment a minute ago about providing for a good experience. Well, the young people today are different than my generation, where I had to share a bedroom with my sister. They're used to the
Right.
amenities of having their own private bathroom and their own bedroom. And so we've got to keep up with the times to be able to recruit the students' expectations and the families' expectations of today, but recruit to outperform and have a nicer facility than our competitions down the road, up the road, across the state, across the country. So those are the easier projects, in my opinion, are those construction projects where you can see your dollars, come out of the ground, so to speak. Um, the unrestricted dollar, the almighty unrestricted dollar, people like to say, oh, it's the black hole. Well,
Right.
it's not. It's just for those projects that you can't anticipate. We want to give our presidents the ability to have some dollars for discretionary use as projects come up or the unforeseen is presented to us. So that's something that, if I have to come up with a barrier or a challenge, it's because at Illinois Wesleyan, we have really leaned into unrestricted because there is a lot of unforeseen projects that need attention. And we've
Right.
just kind of flipped the script with our frontline fundraisers, getting them to start with that appeal. And of course, I always say part of the art of being a good fundraiser is listening, not just
Right.
to what a prospect may be saying, but it's what they're not saying. And if we can present a good case, a good argument for why unrestricted dollars is needed, they're much more apt to listen and to lean into that and allow the university, the president, the most part, to make the decisions on how their dollars are used. And it's many times for scholarship support to help recruit
Right.
talent to institution, but it can be for other ancillary projects too. But it's just the president decides where the dollars are spent, not necessarily the donor per se.
Right. Is that I can see that being being a challenge in terms of kind of doing that outreach and encouraging some of some of the donors is this idea, this back idea. And I've actually had a similar conversation with somebody else at a different institution, and we were talking about that, this idea about, creating institutional strategy and where donors and their visions and their ideas and their wants come into that, and how it kind of shapes that. And I think, as you rightfully said, the president really does have a big role in terms of helping to guide some of that direction. You mentioned something earlier about, facilities and construction, and being able to tie that link back to, this is why this dollar is important, and you'll be able to see directly where kind of the dollar is going when you're thinking about something like that. I wonder if you ever have a challenge around considering, I'll say it this way, considering where we are in the state of, online learning, and people really getting into this idea of that you can do a lot of things technically from where you are. If it is difficult to change and frame that story around actually creating these physical spaces are very important to, a student experience, to building that, on campus community. And if that's, part of your challenges that you have day to day.
Well, I'd say that's a bigger challenge if I were in the admissions world, because
Right,
what my statement earlier is, I do think there's a place for us, a small private liberal
right,
arts, those that
right,
still want that residential experience.
right,
Because you're right, you can get a degree in mom and dad's basement, in
right,
front of a screen. That's an option.
right,
And that's great that that exists for some people. For some people, that's right for them. But for others, we provide this traditional residential model that
right,
many other institutions do. So we need to lean into that and make us, head and shoulders above our competition. So
right.
I think it's making sure that the recruitment piece, we have the facilities to help our admissions counselors, quote unquote, advocate and sell this university as to why we're different. So that's part of our responsibility too, in our office, and probably others as well. We talk that everybody that works at this institution, whether they want to admit it or not, should be helping recruit and
Right,
fundraise.
right,
Maybe they're not, frontline fundraising, or, actually dragging people here to attend, but you're selling the institution. You're talking passionately about the rewards it offers, and what sets us apart. So, and that's what I think this office in advancement has really bought into, is that we've got a dynamic leader, we've got a phenomenal reputation, a wonderful community that supports us. And so we're just trying to fire on all cylinders and get all those pieces working together that really will set us apart from the
right,
fundraising standpoint. So that's where the timing of this campaign, I think, is ideal, with the new leadership, with the energy that we're seeing from the campaign pillars that we're presenting.
right.
I wouldn't have said yes to this opportunity if I didn't believe in this place, its mission, and its future. So um, excited to be a part of it. I'd love
That's
to talk
good.
again at the end of this campaign in 5 years and talk about what worked and maybe what fell short and what we learned. So,
I will follow up with you, trust me. Um, it gets me thinking in general, and I mean, you touched on a bit of this, and I wonder if you have anything else to add, but when faced with skepticism around higher ed's ROI, for example, what kinds of stories, what kinds of approaches, I don't know, donor strategies have you used to really reframe that conversation?
well, everybody is different.
Right,
Every donor is different. You can't put, the alums from the 1960s in a bucket and expect to treat them all the same and have the same
right,
conversations.
right,
So you really have to get to know your audience, the individuals, and listening is a huge piece of what we do. I mentioned that before. So
right,
it's kind of knowing how far to take a conversation, and what the donor is looking, or the prospective donor is looking to get out of the relationship with the institution. Sometimes they just need to be heard, whatever it is. They have an axe to grind about a grade they received, 30 years ago, whatever it is. They just need to be heard. So we should be listening and picking
right,
up tidbits of those conversations, because there's a reason they took your phone call or they took your visit. So
right,
if they were really angry and wanted nothing to do with us because of, dot, 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 then they wouldn't have said yes to the conversation. Every now and then you're going to get somebody that's going to just unload because they wanted to be heard,
right,
and that's it. And they're done. And they'll tell you maybe to go pound sand. Let's hope not. But after they've gotten their issues off their chest, maybe they will listen to, the state of the university today. And let me
Right.
describe what really is happening here, not maybe what you've heard out on the street or an assumption you've made based on an article you read in, the Wall Street Journal, whatever it is. So the strategy is to really listen and have a one-on-one conversation and always tell the truth. Always
Right.
speak with integrity and don't
Right.
you know, sugarcoat things and tell them the reality and let them form their own opinion about how they want to continue their relationship with the university, if at all. And it, pains me to say that, but they they are our bread and butter. They are our
Right.
clients, our audience, and many of them are the alums. So they have,
Right.
skin in this game as well. So.
I shifting gears just quickly a little bit about and really thinking about all of the work you're doing and how you measure that, how you're tracking that. What performance indicators are you and your team most focused on right now? How are you measuring success? I mean, maybe just beyond just dollars raised, but what does success really look like for you and what metrics are you looking at?
Well, it's an interesting topic because we are in the quiet phase of a campaign and trying to
Right.
define what the successful campaign looks like. So
Okay.
yes, we have these pillars. We want to build this building. We want to raise this much for scholarship and endowed positions, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll gauge success if we fill those buckets up. But the reality is we will not fill every bucket to the level we had expected. Some will
Right.
overflow, some will come shy. So it's making sure, back to that unrestricted dollar, that we have some of that to quote unquote be fungible to help cap off some of those buckets. But as we're preparing for this campaign in a quiet phase, we're gearing up and adding staff as well. And so I'm just in these conversations the last few weeks as we've been interviewing various prospective staff members in a major gift role. And they want to know how we're defining success. So we've really laid out metrics for our newly hired frontline fundraisers and for our existing, which is something that really hasn't been defined as strongly as I would like. So it's
Right.
not just dollars raised. You're right. Every individual has a goal, but it's a percent of a portfolio seen, numbers proposals written, number of days traveled in a month, in a year, and even planned giving. There's billions and billions of dollars being transferred, of wealth here as the next generation kind of steps up and the current
You're
generations
right.
passes along. And I don't remember the actual number, but it's a massive amount. So we're trying to capitalize on that and making sure our frontline fundraisers are well versed in the planned giving language. We do have a great staff member here at Illinois Wesleyan that is well versed in that. He's a certified financial planner. So we are teaching our frontline fundraisers to partner with their colleague Jordan and introducing him at the appropriate time so that we can have those conversations about, requests, estate plans, et cetera, et cetera. So we're trying to put together all these small benchmarks, these small, and I
Right.
shouldn't diminish it by using the word small, but these carrots of incentivizing folks to define
Right.
success with us so that they have some guardrails in place to know what the expectations are in the course of a new fiscal year. Um, so it's just a learning curve
Yeah.
at this institution. They've not had a lot of that before, and they've been
Right.
extremely successful. It's just trying to work smarter. Um, I expect we all work hard, but let's try to work even smarter,
Right.
capitalize on our resources, our time, our talent, and our budget, because you and I aren't going to get any more hours in a day. So let's
That's true.
work smart about it. Let's hope not,
That's
right? Because
true.
otherwise we would just work more.
I know, but that's exactly it. I say that all the time. We're just if I had more time, I would just fill it up with work. Okay, so I mean, I think that gives a good picture of where you're setting those benchmarks, what things you're looking for, and as you rightfully said, even those small, even the small numbers, right? Help to build and create kind of a bigger picture of where there are successes and where there are gaps and where we need to focus more of your attention, of course. I think about the next 6 to 12 months. So you are in this phase of doing, the quiet campaign planning, as you mentioned. But looking ahead to the next 6 to 12 months, what are your biggest goals for the campaign, for your team? And what would success look like for you personally, professionally, all across the board?
Yeah, thank you for following up. I kind of got off track and didn't finish
No,
kind
no.
of what was in my mind. But one of the reasons you do a campaign is to raise the bar so that there's a
Right.
new norm. And alumni participation used to be a piece of the algorithm that U.S. News and World Report would report out on of, rankings. And that's no longer the case, but it's also a gauge of success. How many of your alums give every year, regardless of the
Right.
amount. And of course, we want to raise that percentage higher than it is today. We want to have a higher percentage every year throughout the campaign, but we want that new norm to be even higher. The number of acquisition, we want a higher acquisition rate beyond the campaign than we have today. So that's another focus for us. And just, more exposure. I think many institutions would probably agree. We don't do a great job tooting our own horn. We probably get
Right.
so busy putting our heads down. But if you look up, are you doing a good job of letting others know, not just your alums that receive the newsletter and the emails, but your greater community, your friends of the university? Do they
Right.
recognize really what you're offering? Because you don't want to have, gates up around your, 80 acres of campus or whatever it is and not let the outside in or the inside out. We can
Right.
benefit this community and we should be partners. So we really want to, at the end of this campaign and throughout the campaign, we'll pull down those walls and invite the greater community in, the friends of the university in to see what we're doing, how we're educating
Right.
our young people, how we're giving back to our community. And again, that's where our president has done such a phenomenal job. Where I was in a conversation yesterday planning a back to school barbecue. And you think back to school, you think students, right? We're having it about a week before students are back and just inviting friends of the university to come tailgate with us,
Yeah, the community
have a hog
building.
roast just to, remind them that we're here and here's what we're up to. And, we'll have some talking points, but I really like that about what Illinois Wesleyan is doing. Again, I'm sure other institutions are doing something similar, but we're really trying to be good partners in the community. And I'm proud of this community. I've lived in Bloomington Normal my whole adult life, and I probably will never leave. So it just warms my heart to know again that I'm making an impact, not just with the young people that are Illinois Wesleyan students, and continuing that relationship with alums beyond their graduation days, but also within our community presence as well.
Right. Once again, like really feeding off of that idea of building community and really thriving off community engagement, how important that is. And I think that leads back to your original point about really demonstrating the value of ROI, that, higher education is, of course, about, students and helping them find their futures and their way forward. But it's also about building that entire the family tree, as you rightfully said, and what that means for the broader community and then ideally, society at large. If you could have a magic wand right now,
Yeah.
I'd give it to you, and you could wave it, and you can remove one persistent challenge, one persistent obstacle from your advancement work, what would it be? And what difference would that make in your surroundings, your ecosystem?
Well, if I had a magic wand, I would make myself about 4 inches taller and I'd shed about 40 pounds. Then I'd wave it for my work and advancement. That's a great question, Sharlyn. And it would be different maybe if you asked this to me a few years ago or in a few years, but today my head is around um, the political landscape. I don't want to sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth because 2 minutes ago I talked about, tearing down the walls and the fences and letting the community in. But at the same time, people get wrapped up in the political landscape and they juxtapose
Yep.
their opinions and make assumptions about what we're doing and why we're doing things in higher education or at Illinois Wesleyan. And I just wish we could tune that out, or, erase that from our vernacular, our minds. Um, but such is life. You roll with the punches and, you can't do that. I live in a world of reality. So we just learn to, navigate it as best we can. And then keep in touch with our colleagues at other institutions and share best practices and, what if stories. And um, so that's a unique
I
answer to
think
your
I
question.
No, I think that point is well taken. I definitely don't think you're the only person to make that point. This idea that, you know, the political landscape is so contentious and it can have such a direct impact on what institutions are doing and how they're able to do what they do. And I think, you know, it's definitely a sentiment that is, I think, shared across the board. This idea that they would value a little bit more separation, and this idea that, you know, people see an institution for its own brand, for its own offering, and what it as its own entity is able to, you know, provide to, as you rightfully said, the surrounding community or the community that surrounds it. Um, so I think that's a good, valuable point. Anything else in terms of your day to day that you would love to remove that's a little less big picture?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Is there anything else that comes to mind that I just failed to ask you about, or you really, you know, were hoping you'd get a chance to mention and I didn't, you know, it didn't come up?
I just, hopefully, again, you've heard in the intonation of my voice that I'm passionate about what I do and what we do. Those of all of us in the advancement world, you know, alumni
Hmm.
and development, whatever you want to call your offices, because there's many people that don't know, you know, right away they're like, oh, fundraising. And they think like used car salesman. But if you
Yeah.
have a chance to have a conversation like we've done, and it gets the wheels turning in their mind and they're thinking about, oh, yeah, I never thought about it like that, then that's a good day for me. That's a win. I've kind of sold them on what I do. And
Right.
it is very rewarding. And again, back to the first part of our conversation, it's not what young people, you know, in grade school aspire to be when they grow up necessarily, because it's a kind of an unknown, but it's very rewarding. I'm pleased to be in this field.
That's wonderful. I think mostly everyone I've spoken to in higher ed has said, you know, I am pleased to be in this field for more than just, you know, I'm here to catch a paycheck, but because of this idea that you're able to literally give back and see these individual stories and how the impact of their experience within their institution is impacting their lives and the lives of the people around them. So,
Yeah.
that's wonderful.
We don't do it for the money. I mean, there's a
Right.
Fortune 50 company here in Bloomington Normal. You might know of State Farm Insurance. Corporate
Right.
offices are here, and I have many friends that work for them, and they talk about, you know, their pay raises and incentives, and you know, they're double digit pay raises. And
Yep.
in higher education, I joke that
You
we
don't
can't
get
even
that.
spell raise or
Yeah.
bonus.
Yeah. You don't get that. Yeah.
So we
No,
don't do
not
it
at
for
all.
the money. It's for the intrinsic reward.
Right, right. Well, thank you so much, Gina. I mean, thank you for sharing your time, your experience, your perspective with us today. It's been such a thoughtful and generous conversation. To our listeners, to our watchers, I hope this episode sparked ideas, affirmed your own experiences, or maybe helped you see a challenge in a new light. If you are a leader in higher education, communications, marketing, advancement, enrollment, whatever, and you want to contribute to this evolving conversation, I'd love to hear from you, because the truth is these conversations are not just talk. They really are the start of a shared roadmap for the future of our field. So let's get to work. Thank you so, so much again, Gina.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Take care.